What's up, everybody? Welcome to Firewatch 3 Raw TV, just like the shirt says. Raw TV. Alright, let's get into this. Now, this video is going to probably touch some nerves, so I'm going to be very deliberate, very specific with the things that I say. Choose my words very carefully so that this doesn't get misinterpreted. There are no semantics where people are like, trying to figure out what I'm talking about. And I need to specify and clear this up very, very quickly early in the video is I am not defending Shawn Ray. Okay? Plain and simple. I am not defending what he said about Shawn Rhoden being an addict. Okay? Let me just say that right off the bat. Now, I am friends with Shawn Ray. I've known him for a lot of years. He's never personally fucked with me. He fucks with a lot of people. He's never personally fucked with me. Don't know why. I mean, he's got this weird sense of humor sometimes, but he's never personally fucked me over, so I kind of just, I don't judge people based on my past and the things that I've done in my past and who I was in my past. So therefore, I don't hold something against someone or pass judgment on them specifically unless they've done something to me. Now, I just take that and put it aside because everybody has their own situations with other people, and I don't know Shawn Ray's situation with, Shawn Rhoden. I don't know Shawn Ray's situation with Guy Sister Nino. I don't know. So my thing is I'm not defending Shawn, but the truth needs to be told specifically for Shawn Rhoden. Let me get into this. Now, there was a Dave Palumbo video that was put out with Shawn Ray where Shawn Ray specifically called Shawn Rhoden an addict. Now, specifically also the way he said it was like kind of talking down to him. The tone of it, and I think a lot of people didn't like that derogatory tone, first of all. And calling someone an addict, and I want to say right now that Shawn Ray used the wrong term. However, he was not wrong. And I know this is going to piss some people off, and especially Guy. Guy, just hear me out, okay? And again, I'm making this video not to help Shawn Ray, but specifically for Shawn Rhoden, because Shawn would want what I'm about to say to come out because he talked about it publicly, and he wanted people to know, he wanted people to understand, he wanted people to possibly get help if they were in the situation he was in because they see him as their idol. They see him as someone who's got their shit together as a Mr. Olympia. And if he could go through this and they're going through it and he could beat it, he could be an inspiration to them to beat this also. Now, bear with me again. Myself, I was a heroin addict. I am 20 years last month. 20 years in recovery from heroin. It started with the painkillers that were given to me when I got injured wrestling. It moved on to Nubane, and the Nubane quickly dried up, moved to Oxycontins. Oxycontins dried up, and it quickly moved to heroin. That's the short version of it. Heroin was about a year and a half, 2 years. I got clean off heroin, never went back to another opiate, never had a relapse, and have been clean for 20 fucking years, 2 decades. All right, that being said, I share the addiction issue with Shawn Rhoden. Let me explain. Shawn was open about it. He would talk to people about it, and he would kind of say stuff like, well, when I stopped competing before, I started drinking a lot when my father died. Like he would say, when my father passed, I started drinking a lot. I was drinking every night. He would say that. This is years ago he would say that. Like he would just kind of put that out there. I was drinking every night. Drinking. He talked about drinking, but he never really, at that point, he hadn't really gone in described what he was going through. He just wasn't ready. He was still healing from what was going on. He probably was still healing from his father also. And even talking about the drinking and stuff would drudge up those memories. Now, that being said, recently, Michael Hearn put out a video. It's on his YouTube channel right now. It was an interview with Shawn. And it's the first time I've seen him go public with the specific version of his story where he calls himself an alcoholic. And he goes through the entire thing. He talks about how his father passed away and he was literally drinking in the morning, drinking at night. He was drinking all the time. He had bottles stashed all over the house. He said that he just woke up one morning and he started to pee blood and was like, oh, well, whatever. Went to the work, grabbed some more booze, came home and started drinking again. And this went on and on and on until he kept peeing blood for a little while and wound up having to go to the hospital and told, like, you have to stop or you're going to die. And he said it was like a switch flipped. And I understand because I've been there. When that switch flips, you just want to get away from it. You want to, and moving out to California was a good move for him. You know, moving out to California, Vegas, getting away from the area where he was involved with everything that was hurting him was a big deal. And it helps a lot because I myself, again, can absolutely relate to Shawn because I moved away from Rhode Island down to Maryland to get away from the drugs, to get away from the lifestyle, to get away from the things that were causing me the pain when I moved away. Right? So I understand Shawn. I understand where he's coming from. I understand the lifestyle he was living. I understand the pain. I understand all of it. That being said, Shawn went very in depth, and I encourage you to go watch that video because unbeknownst to all of us, Shawn was very open with a lot of things now in his life. You know, he's 46 years old or 45, 46. And he was very open about things because he understood that, you know, he's accomplished so much in his life. He did exactly what he set out to do. He became the best in the world at something, which is bodybuilding. He became Mr. Olympia. And now he has the opportunity, not the responsibility, but the opportunity to help a lot of people that were in his position by being open and honest about the things that happened to him in his addiction, which was alcohol when he was younger. Now, again, I'm not defending Shawn Ray. The way he said it, how he put it, using the word addict, alcoholic is the correct word. I know many people in my close circle that are good friends that are alcoholics. They don't like to be called addicts. It's not the same type of... I've been to AA meetings. I've been to, different groups. I've been to different counseling. I've gone through all of these things, right? And I've gone with friends to AA meetings. So I understand how, the alcoholic recovery is very similar to the drug addict recovery. However, it's different. There are terms that come with it, and you kind of stick in your own lane, right? You're not going to say, well, I was an alcoholic if you were a drug addict. You're not going to say you were a drug addict if you're an alcoholic, right? If you're just hooked on drugs, just hooked on heroin or whatever, you're not going to say, I have a substance abuse problem. If you're the type of person that takes ecstasy or alcohol or drinks rubbing alcohol, mouthwash, whatever, then you have a substance abuse problem. So within those specific genres, those specific addictions, they're labeled certain ways, and that lingo and those words go with those, and they don't really like to cross over. It's almost offensive to some addicts and some alcoholics to be called the opposite. So by calling an addict is actually an insult, and I can almost guarantee you that Shawn will be, I'm not an addict, I'm an alcoholic. I can hear him saying it already in my head. Like, it's different. It's the same but different, bottom line. But Shawn was coming out now and being super open about what really happened to him and what he really went through and discussing it. And, I think that Shawn Rhoden's legacy is not just the fact that he was a bodybuilder. I get very upset when I see people like, we lost another good bodybuilder. Listen, we lost a human being. We lost a man. We lost a father. We lost a son. We lost a brother. We lost a cousin. We lost a friend. We lost another human being that many people considered family, many people that considered a close friend. We lost somebody who is going to be gravely missed for the rest of those people's existence on this planet. And we tend to focus on the bodybuilding thing so much because that's where we know him from. Like, that's where he created his career. And he says in this video with Mike O'Hearn that bodybuilding was a job. Like, it was his talent. He had a talent for it, but he looked at it as his job. So he was a bodybuilder as a job, a competitive bodybuilder. Other than that, he was just a bodybuilder who liked to train. He liked to train and try to improve himself. And he talked about self-improvement in that video also. So he talked about being an alcoholic, going through alcoholism, coming out the other side of it, going off all the alcohol, getting off all the alcohol, and then working on himself. And the gym helped him work on himself. I went through the same situation. I was in full-blown opiate withdrawals. Now, anybody that's ever been in opiate withdrawals knows what that feels like. I was in full-blown opiate withdrawals in the gym, trying to fucking train, in between throwing up sessions in the bathroom because I was in withdrawals. I remember literally being in the gym. It was World Gym Seekonk. I'll never forget this day. And I was like banged up. I was going through withdrawals. I was having the hardest time. And I walked in there and I put 2 little plates, like 20 pounds on a lat pull down. And I said, of all things, I want to train back, right? It couldn't just be arms or whatever. and I grab the bar, right? And I go to pull the bar down, and my hands are like this. I was shaking, doing like 1 rep. And I was shaking because not just the weight, it was because my body was going through hell. And the only reason that I was able to get in there was my discipline from bodybuilding, right? I could work on myself, work on my discipline, push myself through withdrawals and come out the other side. Shawn was the same way. He was using bodybuilding as a way to get himself well, mentally, physically. He was using bodybuilding as a way to get away from alcoholism. He was using bodybuilding exactly the way I was, being the only positive thing in your life at that time, right? Bodybuilding at that point had saved his life. Bodybuilding at that point had saved my life. And I think that's the message. I think that's the most important part of this. Like, we're all arguing about, what Shawn Ray said, and I believe that if Shawn Ray had come out and said, he was an alcoholic when he was younger, and, that might have done some damage to his body. Now, I'm a former drug addict. I'm in recovery. I know, sure as shit, for a fucking fact, I have done damage to my body that is not reversible. What is it? We don't know yet until you get a little bit older. But I have taken years off my life, and I can guarantee you that Shawn Rhoden understood and knew that he had damaged his body, and he again had taken years off his life going through alcoholism. You learn that as a fact, okay? Now, had that been presented the right way, the proper way, I think that's what Shawn Rhoden would actually want. He wanted people to know his actual story. He wanted people to understand what he went through. And he wanted people to understand that he understands what they're going through. Okay, that was the whole take home that I got from this. You could see it. He was very reserved with his words. He spoke the words that he wanted to come across the way that people understood what he was going through. He didn't laugh about it. He didn't joke about it. He was literally bearing his soul to Mike O'Hearn in that interview. And it was the first time I had seen him go that far in public with it, right? We all knew around here what was going on when he lived here. He was open about it. He was drinking and stuff. He's not the only one. There are other friends that I know that was a junior nationals champion that when he couldn't earn that pro card, when he thought he was going to earn the pro card, and surprised he didn't, he went off and became an alcoholic too. He eventually reeled it back in, competed a few times, did fairly well, never won his pro card, retired, and now he lives a great life, and he's a recovering alcoholic also. He's from here too. Like, this is not that Shawn was alone in this. It was that now, being a Mr. Olympia, he has the ability to actually help somebody by telling his story. He's already gone through it. He's beaten it. He's come out the other side. He's stronger for it, right? We have all watched him in the public spotlight rise to his success. And now being up there is when you can pull others up with you, right? They try to pull you down, but you can pull them up with you. You can lift people up. And I think that's exactly where Shawn was going, Shawn Rhoden. I got to keep saying Shawn Rhoden because we have Shawn Ray and Shawn Rhoden in this whole situation. But again, I am not defending Shawn Ray. I think that, Shawn Rhoden's close friends, like myself, when I saw it, I saw Shawn Ray, what he said, I said, I know what he's talking about. I 100% know exactly what he's talking about. It's the way that he puts it out there, and that is Shawn Ray's thing. Shawn Ray, as long as I've known him, there are people that absolutely fucking hate him for the things that he says because it's the way he says them. It's not even that they're not true sometimes. It's like how he says them, the way he says them. There's really no bedside manner with Shawn. And I guess, as a bodybuilder, you don't have to have that normally. But Shawn Ray is no longer a bodybuilder. He's no longer an athlete, right? He is the voice of, not the voice, but he's one of the faces of bodybuilding news, right? So therefore, when you're one of the faces, you should have respect. You should speak a certain way. You should put out the information in a very non-biased way to let people make their own decisions and not put your twist on things, right? Make sure that you understand what's going on. I mean, let's be real. This is not the first time Shawn Ray has said something that pissed people off. It happens all the time. Shawn Ray should have known better by now to say, look, this is the way I feel about something and I am who I am, but look, I'm out there talking to the masses. And what's important is not necessarily getting the story out, but getting the story out so that they can connect with it, they can understand it, and then they can actually use it to better themselves. And all of that's getting lost right now because of semantics and the way that Shawn Ray brought it up and the way he interpreted it and then the way he communicated it to everybody, right? And that's part of the problem. When you are a journalist, when you are somebody who's reporting on something, the way you communicate is key. Clear communication, truthful communication, that's key to putting out information where people can understand, right? Non-biased, clear information by saying, well, he was an addict. Like, that paints a picture of him like laying in a gutter with a needle in his arm. That is the wrong thing to fucking say. And if you're talking about how, well, he's an addict with the drugs, you know, the bodybuilding drugs, well, Shawn Ray was an addict with the drugs too. He can say whatever he wants, but he took them for years. Nobody takes drugs for years unless you're prescribed by a doctor for an ailment, which is fucking you up, or you're addicted to them. Just because you got off them at the end of your career doesn't mean that you weren't addicted to them while you were taking them. You couldn't train and compete without them. Why? Because you're addicted to them. Your brain, your body is addicted. They need that drug in order to get the result that you want. Without it, you don't have the result. Same thing with heroin. The result you want is to be high. You need the drug to get high. You need the steroids to get big. There's an addiction that comes with that. I don't care what anybody says. So Shawn Ray is no better than anybody else who ever stuck a needle in their ass in the history of our sport, period. So therefore, talking about someone being addicted to steroids, well then the person saying that should at the same time say, I know because I myself was addicted to steroids. I couldn't get off them for 15 years, 20 years, whatever the case may be, right? Now, presenting it that way, you don't look like a dick. You look like I'm speaking from experience. I know what I'm talking about, and this is what it is, right? But that's not how it was presented. It's not how Shawn Ray usually presents himself, and he carries himself. It's just not. He says what he thinks, and in his head it sounds one way, and when it comes out to the rest of the world, it sounds like something else. That's who Shawn is, that's Shawn Ray is, and that's how we know him. We all know him like that. It's not a surprise. It's not a shock. I watched the video with David. I'm like, so what? This is Shawn. This is what he does. Like, there's nothing about this that's any different than any other time, but it hit hard and it hit home because Shawn Rhoden was really liked and loved by a lot of people. Like, he had a lot of close friends, especially Guy, who used to train with him, hang out with him, compete. I mean, Guy was around him a lot. You know, Guy, Stanimal, these guys that were always around him. And it is what it is, guys. It's not that Shawn Ray was wrong. It's not at all. It's about how it's presented. 99% of the time in life, it's not what you say. It's how you say it as to how people will react. People know the truth before you even spit it out. They know. It's whether or not you touch that nerve emotionally and personally in them when you speak it that is going to get the backlash, or on the flip side, the understanding that you want. And I think that this should be a good lesson for Shawn Ray. Do I think he's going to change? I don't think so. I've known Shawn for a lot of years. I don't think he's going to change. He's going to stand by what he said, and that's going to be it. I mean, he may say something like, well, I could have put it a different way. Well, you know, here's the deal. Like, yeah, it could have been put a different way. It could have been put a much more tasteful, tactful way where we wouldn't be going through this circus of people being upset with what Shawn Ray said about Shawn Rhoden. Had he put it the proper way, everything would have been like, wow, you know, and you can watch the Michael Hearn video. Anybody that knew Shawn Rhoden personally, that really knew him, knew the problem that he had when he was younger with the drinking. He was very open with it. He was not hiding it. It just wasn't elaborated on until recently before his passing, where he really wanted to get that word out there and show the world, like, look, you guys are loving me because I overcame the odds and I beat everybody to be Mr. Olympia. But I overcame the odds and I beat alcoholism. Do you know how many people can say that they've beaten alcoholism, gotten past it, and became Mr. Olympia? Do you know how many people have been, I was an alcoholic and I fucking walked away from that. I got better. I got well. I worked on myself and I became the best in the world at something. That's the story of Shawn Rhoden. The highs, the extreme lows, and then the back to the highs again. Like, that was Shawn, right? He was knocked down and he got back up and he found a way to get to where he needed to be successful despite being an alcoholic and probably having those cravings for the rest of his life. It's an alcoholic and an addict would understand. I understand when I see it. I understand what Shawn had to go through to become Mr. Olympia. Many people won't. I understand what I have had to go through to get the place I'm in right now. To get that spot I'm in right now, to where I own different businesses. I've traveled the world. I've done all these crazy things despite being a recovering heroin addict. Despite all of that pain, despite all of the work I've had to do on myself and constantly trying to grow, here I am. So you might say, well, Jerry made a nice career for himself. Jerry does this. He's got a great wife. He's got a great dog. He's got great friends. And he gets to travel. And he's an NPC judge and all this stuff. Great. But remember, to get there, I had to go through heroin addiction and beat that to get here. 20 years. Odds are I would never have gotten here. Odds are I would have relapsed. Odds are I'd be dead. When you beat the odds and you realize, holy shit, I beat and am beating the odds, that's where Shawn was in this video with Mike. You know, he's trying to show people that, like, you're just seeing this one side of me, and this other side is very important, because this might be motivating you to be a better bodybuilder. This might be motivating you to go to the gym and do your cardio, whatever the case may be. But this motivation over here, this should motivate you to be a better person. This motivation should show you to overcome things that you don't think you can overcome, even when the deck is stacked against you. When you're probably not going to win, you're probably not going to beat alcoholism or drug addiction or sex addiction or whatever it might be. That's me right here. And I beat that shit. I walked away from that shit and became this. And if I did this, all you got to do is follow my blueprint and you can do this too. You're here right now. Trust me, it's not forever. Work on yourself and you can be over here. That's the whole take-home message. And that's the reason for this video. I really didn't want to make this video, but I'm watching everybody argue back and forth, and I'm like, somebody has to interject to tell the fucking truth. To be 100% truthful with what the fuck is going on and stop arguing. It's not about me. It's not about Shawn Ray. It's not about Guy. It's not about Nick Trigilli. It's not about any of us. It's not about Dave Palumbo. It's not about any of us. It's about Shawn and Shawn Rhoden. I should just say Shawn Rhoden, not Shawn Ray. It's about Shawn Rhoden, his legacy. And his legacy is he was a recovering alcoholic that went through hell to beat the odds to become the best bodybuilder in the world and influence millions of people all over the world and become not just the best in the world, but one of only a certain amount of people to ever win that title in the history of planet Earth. That's a take-home message. Thank you guys for listening. I hope this clears it up. And again, I'm not defending what Shawn Ray said. I have to say that over and over again because people like to take shit and twist it their own way and hear something they're not. So very deliberate, very specific with my words. I'm not defending Shawn Ray, but I think the take-home is Shawn Rhoden was an amazing guy that went far beyond what most people think that he ever did. BioStrengthTraining@gmail.com. Leave comments down below, but don't fight. BioStrength.com is the blog. It's the Shawn Rhoden was more than we think bicep, and we are out.